At 10, my dad beat me and threw me out into a blizzard after believing my sister's lies. I crashed at my friend's place until my mom came back the next day, found out what happened, and burned their whole world down. The winter I turned 10, I learned that family could be a weapon. January in Wisconsin doesn't mess around, and that particular night the temperature had dropped to -15 degrees before wind chill. Snow fell sideways, thick and blinding, piling against windows and burying cars up to their door handles. My sister Aubrey was 13 then, all long limbs and calculated cruelty wrapped in a pretty package. She'd perfected the art of making me disappear while standing right in front of everyone. Our parents were Linda and Thomas, and while Mom traveled frequently for her pharmaceutical sales job, Dad worked from home as an insurance adjuster. He'd always favored Aubrey, saw her as this delicate thing that needed protecting, while I was sturdy and plain, somehow always in the way. Mom had left that morning for a 3-day conference in Minneapolis. She'd kissed my forehead, told me to behave, and promised to bring back something special. I'd watched her car pull away, not knowing it would be the last normal moment for a long time. The trouble started over something stupid. Aubrey had been dating this boy named Tyler secretly because Dad had a strict no-dating rule until 16. She'd been sneaking out her window after everyone went to sleep, climbing down the trellis by the garage. I knew about it because I'd seen her twice, but I'd never said anything. What did I care if she wanted to freeze her butt off meeting some sophomore with terrible facial hair? But that afternoon, everything changed. Dad's vintage watch, the one his father had given him before dying, went missing from his dresser. It was gold with a cracked leather band, worth maybe $200 but priceless to him emotionally. He kept it in a wooden box next to his wedding photo, took it out sometimes just to hold it. Aubrey found me first. I was in my room doing homework, struggling through long division. She appeared in my doorway with tears already streaming down her face, mascara running in perfect rivulets. Even then I recognized the performance. "Dad's watch is gone," she said, voice trembling. "I saw you coming out of their bedroom earlier. What did you do with it?" My stomach dropped. "I wasn't in their room. I've been here since I got home from school." She moved closer, lowering her voice to something dangerous. "If you tell Dad about Tyler, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a thief. Including the police." Before I could respond, she screamed. Actually screamed, this piercing wail that brought Dad running up the stairs. She collapsed against him, sobbing about how she'd confronted me about the watch and I'd threatened her, told her I'd hurt her if she told anyone. Dad's face transformed into something I'd never seen before. Pure rage, cold and focused. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, dragging me out of my room while I tried to explain. Aubrey followed, crying about how scared she was, how I'd been acting strange lately, how she'd seen me going through their things. The first slap caught me across the cheek, snapping my head sideways. I tasted blood where my teeth cut into my lip. Dad had never hit me before, never raised a hand to either of us. But something had broken loose in him, something that made him deaf to my denials and blind to Aubrey's lies. "Where is it?" His voice was barely human. "Where's my father's watch?" I tried telling him I didn't take it, that I hadn't been in their bedroom at all. Each denial earned another blow. His belt came off next, and he used it across my back, my legs, anywhere he could reach. I curled into a ball on the hallway floor, arms over my head, while my sister watched with dry eyes now. The physical pain was bad, but worse was the feeling of complete helplessness. Nobody was coming to save me. Nobody believed me. My own father had already decided I was guilty, had already chosen Aubrey's word over mine without question. When he finished, I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Dad stood over me, chest heaving, belt still in his hand. "Get out," he said. "I don't want to see your face. Get out of my house. Dad, please, it's a blizzard out there. Now." Aubrey spoke up then, voice small and frightened. "Daddy, maybe that's too harsh. It's really cold." Playing the merciful angel. I wanted to scream at her, to claw that fake concern right off her face. But Dad was already hauling me toward the stairs, down to the front door. I grabbed for my coat from the rack, but he slapped my hand away. The door opened onto a wall of white. Wind immediately cut through my thin sweater and jeans. Snow invaded the entryway, swirling around us both. "Please," I begged. "I'll sleep in the garage. Just don't make me go out there." Dad shoved me forward. I stumbled down the porch steps into knee-deep snow. My sneakers and socks were soaked instantly, the cold like knives against my skin. The door slammed shut behind me, and I heard the deadbolt click into place. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, waiting for him to change his mind. The wind tore at my clothes and hair. My face went numb almost immediately. Through the window, I could see Aubrey's silhouette moving away from the door. My friend Jessica lived 4 blocks away. Getting there felt like crossing the Arctic. I ran at first, then stumbled, then just forced myself to keep moving. Each breath hurt my lungs. Ice formed in my eyelashes. My hands stopped feeling like hands and became distant things attached to my arms. Cars had stopped moving on the roads. Nothing was plowed. A few houses glowed with warm light, but I was too scared to knock on strangers' doors looking like I did, beaten and half frozen. What if they didn't believe me either? What if they called Dad and he told them I was a runaway, a troublemaker? Jessica's house appeared through the white like a miracle. I fell more than walked up their driveway, nearly crawling by the time I reached the front door. My fingers wouldn't work well enough to knock properly. I used my elbow instead, weak thumping sounds that barely carried. Jessica's mom, Patricia, opened the door. I must have looked like something from a horror movie. She gasped and pulled me inside immediately, yelling for her husband Glenn. They wrapped me in blankets, sat me by their fireplace, brought me hot chocolate that I couldn't hold because my hands were shaking so badly. Patricia examined my face, the mark from Dad's slap already swelling. "Honey, what happened? Where are your parents?" I told her everything. The watch, Aubrey's accusation, Dad beating me and throwing me out. My voice kept breaking, sentences coming out in fragments. Glenn's expression grew darker with every word, jaw muscles flexing. Patricia held my hand while I talked, sometimes wiping away my tears with tissues. "We need to call the police," Glenn said. "And your mother," Patricia added. "Where is she?" They tried Dad first, speakerphone so I could hear. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice casual like nothing had happened. "Hi, Thomas, it's Patricia Brennan. Your daughter is here with us." Silence, then she ran away. I was about to call and report it. "She didn't run away. She came here after you beat her and forced her outside in a blizzard. She has visible injuries and nearly got frostbite." More silence. "I don't know what she told you, but she stole from me. I disciplined her appropriately." "Appropriately?" "Thomas, she's 10 years old and you threw her into sub-zero weather without a coat. We're calling the police and Child Protective Services. You do what you need to do. My daughter is a liar and a thief." He hung up. Patricia's hands were shaking now too, but from anger. Glenn was already dialing 911. Jessica sat next to me on the couch, holding my other hand, her eyes wide and scared. Mom was harder to reach. She was at a conference dinner, phone on silent. Patricia left 3 urgent voicemails before finally getting through to the hotel and having them pull her out of the banquet hall. When Mom called back, Patricia handed me the phone. "Baby? What's wrong?" I broke down completely. The story came out in gasping sobs. Mom went silent, the kind of silence that feels like the air before lightning strikes. When she spoke again, her voice had changed into something I'd never heard before. "Put Patricia back on." I handed over the phone. Patricia listened, said yes several times, then "We will, absolutely." She hung up and looked at Glenn. "She's driving back tonight. 3 hours if the roads allow it. She said under no circumstances is this child to be returned to that house." The police arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Brandon Kelly was this big guy with kind eyes who looked furious when he saw the mark on my face. His partner, Officer Lisa Wright, took photographs of my injuries, each flash making me flinch. They documented the belt marks on my legs and back, asked careful questions about exactly what had happened. "We need to go to your house and speak with your father," Officer Kelly said gently. "You'll stay here where it's safe." I panicked at the idea of them confronting Dad. What if he says I'm lying? "Your injuries don't lie, sweetheart. Neither does throwing a child into a blizzard." They left, and Patricia made me eat some soup even though my stomach was churning. Jessica loaned me pajamas and sat with me in her room, trying to distract me with stories about school. I couldn't focus on anything she said. My brain kept replaying Dad's face, That stranger's rage where my father used to be. The officers returned an hour later with updates. Dad had been arrested for child abuse and reckless endangerment. Aubrey had apparently broken down when they separated her from Dad for questioning, admitted she'd lied about seeing me in their parents' room. She'd actually taken the watch herself to pawn it for money to spend with Tyler. Panic had set in when Dad discovered it missing, and she'd blamed me rather than confess. Officer Wright sat next to me, explaining this with careful words. Your sister made a very serious mistake. Your father made an even worse one. But you did nothing wrong. Do you understand that? I nodded, but inside I felt hollowed out. My own sister had nearly gotten me killed. My own father had believed her without hesitation. Mom arrived around midnight, still in her business suit, mascara smeared from crying. She'd made a 3-hour drive in blizzard conditions, risking her own life to get to me. Patricia had barely opened the door before Mom was on her knees in front of me, hands cupping my face, inspecting every injury with shaking fingers. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. She held me for a long time, neither of us speaking. Finally, she pulled back and looked at the Brennans. Thank you for protecting my daughter. I can never repay this. You don't need to, Glenn said. Just take care of her now. Mom drove us to a hotel that night, wouldn't even consider going back to the house. She called her sister, my Aunt Rachel, who lived 2 hours away. By dawn, Rachel had arrived to help. The two of them sat in the hotel room planning while I pretended to sleep, listening to their whispered conversation. I want full custody, Mom said. He's never touching her again. What about Aubrey? Aubrey made her choice. She chose to lie, and that lie nearly killed her sister. The next days blurred together. Mom hired a lawyer named Victoria Sanders who had the personality of a shark and the strategy to match. Criminal charges were filed against Dad. Child Protective Services opened a full investigation. Mom filed for emergency custody and divorce simultaneously. Dad tried to fight it at first, claimed I'd provoked him, that any father would have reacted the same way. But the photographs didn't lie, and neither did the severity of that blizzard. The prosecutor assigned to his case was a woman named Angela Torres who apparently had no tolerance for child abusers. Aubrey's confession complicated everything. She recanted it within a day, claimed the police had pressured her. But Officer Wright had recorded the whole interview and Aubrey's admission was clear and voluntary. The watch turned up at a pawn shop 3 towns over, right where she'd said it would be. Mom made sure everyone knew what happened. She called Dad's boss, his friends, his parents. My grandmother, Dad's mom, actually defended him at first, said kids these days needed more discipline. Mom shut that down fast, offering to show her the photos. Grandmother went quiet after that. The legal process dragged on. Mom got emergency custody immediately, and we moved into an apartment across town. She arranged for me to see a therapist named Dr. Caroline Hughes twice a week. Those sessions were hard, digging into feelings I wanted to bury. But slowly, incrementally, they helped. School was torture. Word had spread about what happened, and kids either stared at me with pity or avoided me entirely. Some didn't believe it, thought I was making things up for attention. One boy, Marcus Winters, actually told me I probably deserved it. Jessica punched him in the cafeteria for that comment, earned herself a week's suspension, and became my best friend for life. Dad's trial happened in April. Spring had melted the snow, but I still flinched every time I saw ice. Mom held my hand in the courtroom while I testified about that night. Aubrey sat with Dad, her choice made clear. She cried on the stand, said she was sorry, that she never meant for things to go so far. The jury didn't buy it. Dad was convicted of felony child abuse and reckless endangerment. The judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison, with additional probation after release. He'd also permanently lose custody, with supervised visitation only if I chose to allow it when I turned 18. The judge's words stuck with me: a father's first duty is to protect his child, not harm her. You failed in the most fundamental way possible. Aubrey stayed with Dad's parents while he served time. Mom offered to take her too initially, said she was still her daughter. But Aubrey refused, called Mom a traitor for pressing charges against Dad. She chose her side, and it wasn't mine. The divorce was finalized by summer. Mom got the house, full custody of me, and a significant portion of assets. Dad's lawyer tried to argue that Mom was alienating us from our father, but the judge dismissed that argument pretty quick given the circumstances. But Mom didn't stop there. She discovered something during the divorce proceedings that changed everything. While Dad had been working from home as an insurance adjuster, he'd also been gambling online. Heavily. Thousands of dollars funneled into offshore betting sites, money that should have gone to household expenses and our college funds. Mom's lawyer, Victoria, had hired a forensic accountant who traced every transaction going back 5 years. The gambling explained so much. Dad's mood swings, his increasing irritability, the tension between him and Mom that I'd noticed but couldn't name. He'd been losing badly, draining savings accounts and taking cash advances on credit cards. The watch incident had probably been the breaking point for him, one more thing going wrong when his entire life was collapsing from debt. Victoria used this information like a sledgehammer. Every asset got scrutinized, every bank account frozen and examined. Dad's parents tried to help him financially, but Mom's legal team made sure the court knew about the gambling addiction. It painted a picture of a man out of control, someone who'd become dangerous when stressed. The house sale was particularly devastating for Dad. It was his childhood home, inherited from his parents who'd downsized. Selling it meant erasing that legacy, and Mom made sure he knew every detail. She hired a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales, accepted an offer within 2 weeks. Dad showed up during the final walkthrough, tried to cause a scene, but the police escorted him away. Mom had obtained a restraining order by then, kept him at least 500 feet away from both of us. School remained a battlefield in its own way. By 5th grade, I developed a reputation as that girl whose dad went to prison. Teachers treated me with careful kindness, like I might shatter if they pushed too hard. Some of it was helpful, extensions on assignments when I was having bad days, understanding when I zoned out during class. But mostly it made me feel marked, different from everyone else. There was this girl named Tasha Morrison who decided to make me her personal project. She'd been popular before everything happened, one of those kids who seemed to navigate social dynamics effortlessly. After the trial, she started sitting with Jessica and me at lunch, inviting us to her house after school. Her parents were divorced too, her dad had some kind of substance abuse problem, and she understood what it felt like when your family became public entertainment. People are going to talk, Tasha told me once while we were doing homework at her kitchen table. They're going to make up stories and spread rumors. But here's the thing, they'll get bored eventually. Something new will happen, some other drama, and you'll just be another kid again. She was right, mostly. By middle school, fresh scandals had emerged to capture everyone's attention. The math teacher got arrested for embezzlement. 2 8th graders were caught selling prescription pills. My family's implosion became old news, referenced occasionally but no longer the main topic of hallway gossip. Mom threw herself into work with renewed intensity. She'd already been successful in pharmaceutical sales, but now she became relentless. Top seller in her region 2 years running, promoted to a management position that came with a significant raise. She used to joke that Dad's betrayal had been expensive but worth it, her career had never been better. But I saw the cost of that success. Mom developed insomnia, survived on maybe 4 hours of sleep per night. She'd be up at 2 in the morning, laptop glowing in the darkness, answering emails and preparing presentations. Her hair started graying early, silver threads appearing before she turned 40. She covered them with expensive dye jobs but couldn't hide the exhaustion in her eyes. We moved twice during those years. First to the apartment, then to a small house in a better school district when Mom's promotion came through. Each move felt like shedding another layer of the past, leaving behind ghosts and bad memories. I got my own room finally, painted it purple and filled it with posters of bands I pretended to like because the popular girls liked them. Therapy with Dr. Hughes became something I actually looked forward to rather than dreaded. She never pushed me to forgive anyone or forced me to discuss things I wasn't ready for. Instead, she taught me tools for managing anxiety and processing trauma. We did art therapy sometimes, painting abstract images of emotions I couldn't verbalize. My anger was always red and black, violent slashes across canvas. The nightmares evolved over time. Initially, they were straightforward replays of that night, the belt, the cold, the door slamming shut. But as I got older, they became more symbolic. I'd dream about being trapped in frozen mazes, searching for warmth that stayed just out of reach. Or I'd be standing in our old house watching it fill with snow, unable to escape as ice covered everything. Dad's parents, my grandparents Gerald and Ruth, tried maintaining a relationship with me for a while. They'd call Mom's cell phone and ask to speak with me, send birthday cards with checks inside. Mom never intercepted these attempts, always gave me the choice. I spoke with them a few times, awkward conversations where we all pretended things were normal. But Ruth made a mistake during one of these calls when I was 12. She suggested that maybe I'd misunderstood what happened that night, that Dad had just been trying to teach me a lesson about honesty. The implication was clear: I'd blown things out of proportion, destroyed the family over a simple punishment. I hung up on her mid-sentence. When she called back, Mom answered and unleashed something I'd never witnessed before. She spoke in this low, controlled voice that was somehow more terrifying than yelling. She explained in graphic detail exactly what the doctors had documented: the bruises, the lacerations, the early stages of frostbite on my fingers and toes. She described how close I'd come to hypothermia, how another 20 minutes outside might have killed me. "Your son beat a 10-year-old child and threw her into a blizzard to die," Mom said. "Those are facts. They're documented by medical professionals and police reports. If you ever suggest to my daughter again that she misunderstood her own abuse, I will make sure you never speak to her again. Do you understand me?" Ruth apparently understood. The calls stopped after that. Birthday cards still arrived for a few more years, then those stopped too. I heard later that Gerald had gotten sick, some kind of heart condition, and I felt nothing. These people who were supposed to be my family had chosen to defend their son rather than protect their granddaughter. Middle school brought new challenges. My body started changing in ways I wasn't prepared for, and the added attention from boys made me deeply uncomfortable. I'd freeze up when guys approached me, couldn't distinguish between normal teenage interest and genuine threat. Dr. Hughes said this was common for abuse survivors: we become hypervigilant, see danger everywhere. There was this boy named Justin Caldwell who asked me to the 8th grade dance. He seemed nice enough, played basketball and made people laugh. Jessica encouraged me to say yes, insisted it would be good for me to do something normal. I agreed reluctantly, bought a dress that Mom said looked beautiful, and spent the entire week before the dance having anxiety attacks. The dance itself was fine until Justin tried to put his arm around me during a slow song. I shoved him away so hard he stumbled backward into another couple. Everyone stared while I ran out of the gym, hyperventilating in the bathroom until Jessica found me. Justin was decent about it, told people I'd gotten sick and that's why I left. But I never went to another school dance. Mom started dating someone when I was 13. His name was Robert Chen, an attorney she'd met through work. He was careful around me, never pushed for bonding or tried to act like a father figure. Just existed quietly on the periphery of our lives, taking Mom to dinners and making her smile in ways I hadn't seen since before the divorce. I wanted to like him. Mom deserved happiness, deserved someone who treated her well. But I couldn't shake the suspicion that he'd eventually disappoint her, that all men were just Dad waiting to happen. It wasn't fair to Robert, who by all accounts was genuinely kind, but trauma doesn't care about fairness. They dated for 2 years before Mom sat me down to discuss marriage. Robert had proposed, and she wanted my blessing before saying yes. We were in the kitchen of our house, afternoon light streaming through windows I'd helped her pick curtains for. "You don't need my permission," I told her. "It's your life." "It's our life," she corrected. "Robert would be part of our family. I won't do that if you're not comfortable." I thought about it, really thought. Robert had never given me a reason to distrust him. He'd been patient with my standoffish behavior, never complained when I monopolized Mom's time. He'd even helped me with a history project once, staying up late to help me build a model of a Civil War battlefield. "Does he make you happy?" I asked. "Very much so." "Then marry him." "But if he won't," Mom said firmly. "And if he did, I'd handle it. You're not responsible for protecting me." They got married in a small ceremony the following spring. I was 15, awkward in a bridesmaid dress, watching Mom glow in a way that made my chest ache. Aubrey wasn't invited. Dad's entire side of the family wasn't invited. This was a fresh start, a new chapter that had no room for people who'd caused harm. Robert moved into our house, and slowly, incrementally, I adjusted to having him around. He worked long hours at his law firm, specialized in corporate contracts, and never tried to enforce rules or act parental. Just existed as a steady presence, someone who loved my mother and treated me with respect. High school started, and with it came new social dynamics to navigate. I developed a habit of keeping people at arm's length, maintaining friendships but never letting anyone get too close. Jessica remained my constant, the only person besides Mom and Dr. Hughes who knew all my layers. Tasha had moved to Oregon after 8th grade, her mom taking a job transfer, but we stayed in touch through social media. I joined the art club because it required minimal social interaction. Just me, a sketch pad, and whatever I felt like drawing that day. The teacher, Mrs. Valerie Hoffman, recognized something in my work, anger, maybe, or pain translated into visual form. She encouraged me to enter pieces into competitions, said I had talent worth developing. My artwork became darker as I got older. Lots of winter landscapes, frozen figures, houses buried in snow. Mrs. Hoffman never asked about the recurring themes, just provided technical guidance and positive reinforcement. One piece won second place in a statewide high school art competition, a painting of a small figure walking through a blizzard toward a distant light. Mom cried when she saw it displayed at the awards ceremony. Not sad tears, but something more complicated. Pride mixed with grief, maybe. Recognition of how far I'd come and acknowledgement of what I'd survived to get there. Aubrey graduated from high school while I was a sophomore. I knew because Dad's parents sent an announcement, probably hoping I'd attend the celebration. I threw the invitation away without mentioning it to Mom. Whatever Aubrey was doing with her life didn't concern me. She'd made her choice years ago, and I'd made mine. Dating remained complicated. I tried a few times, went out with boys who seemed safe and unthreatening. But intimacy terrified me in ways I couldn't fully explain. The idea of being vulnerable with someone, of trusting them not to hurt me, felt impossible. These relationships fizzled quickly, more from my inability to open up than any fault of the guys involved. Dr. Hughes suggested I might benefit from group therapy, sessions with other teens who'd experienced family trauma. I resisted at first, didn't want to share my story with strangers. But eventually I agreed to try one session, held in the basement of a community center across town. Hearing other people's stories helped in unexpected ways. There was a girl whose mother had broken her arm during an argument. A boy whose stepfather had locked him in a closet for days. Another girl whose parents had used her as a weapon in their custody battle, forcing her to lie in court. We were all damaged in different ways, carrying scars that didn't always show. I attended those sessions throughout high school, found comfort in the shared understanding. These were people who didn't need explanations, who recognized the weight of family betrayal without me having to justify my feelings. We celebrated each other's victories, graduations, college acceptances, first days at new jobs, and supported each other through setbacks. The college application process loomed during my junior year. Mom wanted me to apply to prestigious schools, places that would open doors and provide opportunities. I wanted to stay close to home, couldn't imagine being hours away if something went wrong. We compromised on schools within a 2-hour drive, places I could reach quickly if needed. I got accepted to several universities, ultimately choosing a state school with a strong graphic design program. It was 90 minutes from home, far enough to feel independent but close enough to visit on weekends. Mom helped me move into the dorms, stayed far too long arranging my room and meeting my roommate. Robert had to physically guide her to the car, whispering that I needed space to figure things out. College was its own adjustment. Living with a stranger, navigating new social environments, managing my anxiety without Dr. Hughes readily available. I video called with her weekly those first few months, needed the connection to someone who understood my history. My roommate, a girl named Brenda Watts from Chicago, was kind but confused by my various quirks, the thermostat always set too high, my reluctance to attend parties, the way I flinched at raised voices. I told her everything one night after she asked directly if I was okay. We'd been living together for 3 months, and she clearly noticed the patterns. I gave her the abbreviated version: abusive father, lying sister, winter trauma, and waited for the pity or discomfort. Instead, she just nodded and said her uncle had been abusive to her cousins, so she understood some of what that looked like. Having a roommate who knew but didn't make it weird helped immensely. Brenda became another person I could trust, someone who'd check in without being overbearing. We stayed roommates all 4 years, Moved into an off-campus apartment junior year where I finally had complete control over the temperature. Years passed. I saw Aubrey occasionally at family events on Dad's side, awkward encounters where we circled each other like strangers. She never really apologized, just offered hollow words about being young and stupid. By high school, we'd stopped pretending we were sisters. Dad wrote me letters from prison. They piled up unopened in a box under my bed. Mom never pushed me to read them or to forgive him. She'd burned her own bridges with him, made sure everyone knew what he'd done. Some family members accused her of being vindictive, but she never wavered. "You were 10 years old," she told me once. "He beat you and threw you into a blizzard to die. There is no forgiveness for that. There is no redemption. There's only making sure it never happens again." The scars faded, most of them. The belt marks became thin white lines that only I noticed. The emotional ones took longer, maybe never fully healed. I had nightmares about the cold for years afterward, woke up convinced I was freezing. Dr. Hughes helped me develop coping strategies, ways to ground myself when panic set in. Dad got out after serving 2 years. I was 12 by then, old enough to refuse visitation legally. He tried reaching out through his parents, through mutual friends. Mom shut it down every time. She'd become fierce in a way I'd never seen before, protective to the point of ruthlessness. Aubrey graduated high school and left for college in California, putting as much distance between herself and the wreckage as possible. We didn't speak. I had nothing to say to her, and apparently the feeling was mutual. The Brennans remained close family friends. Patricia and Glenn treated me like a third daughter, included me in holidays and vacations. Jessica and I grew up more like sisters than Aubrey and I ever were. They'd saved my life that night, literally and figuratively. I'm 25 now. Mom and I live in different cities but talk almost daily. She never remarried, said she'd spend enough time with a man who'd failed at being a decent human. I'm working as a graphic designer, living with my girlfriend in an apartment that's always too warm. I keep the thermostat high even in summer, can't stand feeling cold. Aubrey reached out last year through social media. A long message about therapy and growth and understanding now what she'd done. She asked to meet, to talk through everything. I read the message 3 times, then blocked her. Some things don't deserve closure. Some betrayals are permanent. Dad's living in a different state now, working some dead-end job. His parents say he's sorry, that he thinks about that night constantly. Good. I hope it haunts him. I hope every winter, every snowfall, he remembers throwing his 10-year-old daughter into a blizzard to die. I hope there's no peace in that memory. People ask sometimes if I've forgiven them. Therapy types especially love pushing reconciliation, as if forgiveness is mandatory for healing. But I've learned they're separate things. I can heal without absolving them. I can move forward without letting them back in. Mom did burn their world down, exactly as promised. She made sure Dad's reputation never recovered, that Aubrey understood the weight of her choices. Some people called it excessive, said she should have shown more mercy. But I remember being 10 years old, beaten and bleeding, freezing to death in a blizzard because my father believed my sister's lies without question. Mercy is for people who deserve it. They don't. The winter I turned 10, I learned that family could be a weapon, that home wasn't always safe, that the people who should protect you might be the ones you need protecting from. But I also learned that some people, like Mom and the Brennans, would drive through blizzards to save you. Would fight for you without hesitation. Would burn down the whole world if it meant keeping you safe. Those are the people who earned the title of family. The rest are just biological accidents I survived.